I guess, so with this interview,
Yeah.
I thought I'll just start by, because obviously you've reached a very important milestone, 100, and I was doing some research, and
Yeah.
there's the United Nations estimates there's 500,000 people over the age of 100, which means that less than 0.001%
Yeah.
of the entire world population
Yeah.
is over your age.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
you're in quite, you're a minority, you're an exception to
I
the
don't.
rule.
I don't think of it as being much of an issue actually. I've got so much that I'm ongoing, and I'm going to the gym 3 times a week to keep fit. And I'm eating proper foods.
Yeah.
And
Did you ever smoke or drink alcohol?
I used to. Yeah, I used to have my share of binge drinking, and I used to smoke, but I gave it up about 50 years ago.
That's
gave
amazing.
Gave up smoking.
Do you feel like your health recovered in the time?
Yes, yeah. Because I've kept up all my exercise and a good diet, I feel I've recovered completely now.
Yeah, it reminds me of the concept of biological age, which is different to someone's actual
I
age.
have different particles in my body now than I used to have a long time ago.
Yes, very much so.
They're all changed.
Do you feel like you're the same person?
I am a continuity.
You're a continuity.
Yeah, I'm a continuity from. I can remember back to details of my childhood when I was 2.5, in detail, in accurate detail.
Yeah. So
And
yourself is the continuity.
I have a continuity within myself. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't need to go extraneous to that, and I don't need any other thing like religion. I'm absolutely, completely atheist.
Yeah. And why is that?
Because
Were you atheist from a young age?
because I see no reason to believe in some imaginary figure up in the sky or elsewhere who can grant you all the wishes you want when you die.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that.
So are you scared of death?
I'm not scared of it. No, I'm not scared of it. I just will go on living fully as much as I can. I expect to live to 120 at least. And if I die, I die.
Yeah. So that was one of the questions I was going to ask is, would you want to live to 120? Which
I see no
clearly you
reason.
do.
I see no reason to live, not to live to 130, 140, as long as my mind is still working.
Yeah. So I guess one of the issues in the modern world is people, I guess, struggle with purpose and incentive
Well,
to
I
live.
have so many things I'm interested in, and they're ongoing, that I can't see any reason for shuffling off the mortal call, as they say.
So did you have this passion, this lust for life from a young age?
Yes, I've been involved myself fully ever since I was a boy. My father, I was fortunate. My father was an architect, mathematician, engineer, and my mother was a Melbourne University qualified pianist, a musician, and she used to involve herself with concerts and accompanying singers. My father was a lodge member and a Grand Master of a lodge, but I didn't know that when I was a boy. But it may have defined some of the things that he was on about, because everywhere we went out in the country and anywhere, we'd come across people he knew and who invited us in for a cup of tea and things like that.
What sort of people were these?
People on the farmers, small farmers, or writers, or anyone any range of people in the community. But because of his principles, he had a good income as an architect, so he used to do a lot of things which are voluntary things. He, as a voluntary activity, designed a golf course, supervised the setting up of all of the rinks, designed and supervised the clubhouse, and for free. He did the same to set up a bowling club. That is, he actually established the best soils to use as a base.
For no money?
For no money, yeah.
So do you feel like so clearly your father was quite passionate about doing things with his time. Do you feel like you inherited that from him?
I was given that as a gift very early, in the sense that when I was 16 and a half, a client came to my father as an architect, and he had no money. Virtually, he couldn't afford the first week's wage. But my father gave me the job. And so he said, you'll consult with him, you'll handle the work completely. And so I arranged with the council for me to be registered as a submitter of plans. I consulted with a couple, a man and a woman, and they had a block of land. Land was cheap in those days. Yeah. They had a block of land, and it was, we decided that the best thing they could do was make a house out of mud brick. They would be able to dig and make the mud bricks. They'd be able to build the walls themselves using mud brick. There was minimal timber work, and I designed all of the structures so that they could manage them very easily. And they ended up, with my consulting with them all the time and supervising right through, they ended up with a house which met their needs, and it was a fraction of the cost of any other house in the whole of Maryborough.
Yeah, I listened to a little interview you gave a few years ago. I found on the internet, and you talked about you moved to Eltham, which I've been to. Is a beautiful area.
I built a mud brick house at Eltham.
Yeah, and I actually think I found some photos of you from the 50s as well, in some protests about cutting down some trees in the area. I think it was.
Yes. On one occasion I stood in front of a tree, sat down in front of it when a bulldozer was approaching to knock the tree down. They'd already knocked down the adjacent tree, and it was coming at me, and I just sat and stayed there.
Yeah.
And he had to back off.
I take it he didn't run you over.
They didn't run me over, but I saved the tree.
Yeah.
I was involved in saving other trees wherever I could.
Because people typically associate those sort of protest times with the 60s, but I saw that this was happening in 1957, I think it was. Yeah. So when did these sort of left-wing movements in Australia start taking off? Where the young, or at least...
Well, I was involved in political considerations from the time I came to Melbourne, really, when I first came to Melbourne. And I was working with people who had to go on strike because they weren't getting wages or their conditions weren't right. And that was a trade union movement which was very thoroughly ensconced in those days, and did a lot of valuable work to improve the conditions of workers, where otherwise they wouldn't have. For an example, when the paper mills was being made out at Fairfield, it's already been knocked down now, and that block of land is being redeveloped as housing. But when it was initially being made, the person who supervised the building and directed the building couldn't give us stuff about working safety. Working at 20 feet up with wheelbarrows full of concrete. It wasn't the big long hose now from a truck.
Yeah.
It was concrete was taken to a gantry, taken up to the level you're working, wheeled along the planks. And the planks had to be a regulation number of planks in width for safety. He put in less planks, and even when the trade union delegate went along to him and said this is not safe, I will have to ask the people to stop until you get it fixed. He closed the place down and locked the trade union rep on the side out of the place, banning him from coming in, and it meant that it was after about 2 days he wasn't getting any work done. He decided he'd call off the strike and meet the requirements of safety.
Yeah, so
but that sort of thing I was involved in from very early in the piece. So arising out of that, I think possibly I was involved in a lot of other political actions over my life. One of them, of course, was anti-Vietnam. By my present marriage, I have one son who's now 33, and he's a senior programmer and mathematician for the government. But by a previous marriage, I had a son who turned 18, and it turned 18 meant you had to go into military service in Vietnam. He and I were very much opposed to any military service in Vietnam or any involvement in killing their people.
Yeah.
And it meant that the police grabbed him and put him in jail.
How long was he in jail?
He was in jail for a day, and when he got out, I supported him fully, and he set up a printing press down here in Brunswick Street with a big flatbed camera and a carbon arc lamp which projected an image onto a board where you could, using the process of photo litho, you could print. And we're printing anti-Vietnam War posters, and I used to help him with that. But I think that wherever there is injustice, and I've seen a lot of it in my time, I do feel strongly about it. Even now that I'm not so politically involved, I've got so many other things on the go.
Yeah, there's a lot to do.
And someone else's turn to step up to the plate.
Do you feel as if you're young in that? Is a lifetime shorter than you expected from a young age? Or do you feel as if you've actually had a lot
I've seen massive changes. Massive that most people wouldn't realise. I can give you an example. When I was in my early teens, I was fully aware of all of the things that were owned by the people. I used to go along when I was a boy, even when I was about 7 or 8, to the local bank, Commonwealth Bank. We owned the bank. We owned the state bank. We owned the railways. We owned the electricity. We owned the water. We owned 10 public entities, which later on, because of a Liberal Party policy, and the thought that Australians can't do these things, even though they were, and doing it and getting money from it, he and his friends from overseas sold them off to public enterprise, to private enterprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that sort of thing go on in every bloody thing in organisational nature throughout all of my life.
Yeah. And is it more?
And I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, that leads me on to a question which I'll ask in a second, but I know that you've been an engineer your life, and you've worked on planes, correct?
And architecture. I've done both engineering and architecture.
So just for, I guess, anyone listening, because time is something humans are notoriously bad at conceiving. So in 1903 was when the Wright brothers flew the first plane, the Kitty Hawk. And they did not believe that they would see a plane cross the Atlantic Ocean in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
It took only 16 years for the first plane to cross the Atlantic Ocean in 1919. Yep. And then after that, it took 50 years for us to fly to the moon.
Yep.
Now, the moon landing was over 50 years ago, and about 5 years ago, the first human-made object left the solar system.
Yeah.
Now, we have gone great distances, and how far we'll go will always be in question.
Yeah.
But I want to ask, in terms of human progression and what you've witnessed, do you think the world is better off now than it was before?
No, I don't think it's better off. I think that we've gone awry because there have been, in the last 50 years, been continuous military incursions into other people's territories and country with killing off of the public, in some cases wholesale slaughter. And even to the extent of some of our leading military people being caught up in questioning about whether or not they assassinated people. And so it is an issue still, and certainly what was done in Vietnam, if you include things like the My Lai massacre, I don't know if you know about it, do you?
Was this
an American gunship, which is like a hovercraft type ship, with a big capacity, with the machine gunners on it, flying over the village My Lai in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and as the people came out of their houses, shooting them down on the spot, including men, women and children. Just shooting them all. Everyone that they could see is killing them.
Yeah.
Now, I've experienced the My Lai massacre. After the Second World War, because of access that I had, I saw documentary film of all the things that were done to the Jewish people. Including them having to dig their own graves and stand beside the grave while an assassination SWAT comes up and picks them off one another so they fall in. Next lot come up then. I've seen dozens of things like that because I saw captured American, Russian and German film of all of those things. The German film, of course, was done with pride to see how good we are. The Americans wanting to get in on the piece early because they wanted to grab territory. So that there's always the ulterior motives and always the human suffering.
Yeah. And do you think the United Nations doesn't think so, but do you think war is inevitable, part of human nature?
I don't think it's part of human nature. I think it's part of the system that we live under. It's a byproduct of the system that we live under. If we go back to the German economist Marx, Marx was adopted by the Russian Communist Party as an example of what could be done if it weren't for the capitalist system of production. But what Marx actually put forward in terms of economy, and I have read most of Das Kapital, it was something which is possibly the most logical and well-constructed system of economics that would meet the needs of every person who works. that there is. I still believe that what Marx put forward was basically the right way to go.
Do you think we're ready for it?
We're not ready for it because everyone wants to do they want to go on exploiting, they want to go on with capitalist growth. Look, consider the moment we've got huge pollution. Now, why have we got huge pollution? It's because the nature of the system precludes a sensible approach to manufacture. A sensible approach to manufacture, say in America, would be you decide for the needs of people, the needs of cafes, businesses, hotels, service centres that people come in to pay for their service, what are the number of machines that are really needed in terms of variety? Let's argue we say there are 50. Now, those 50 will be made under government production with Rolls-Royce materials, like the Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce was a classic because it was beautifully engineered, brilliantly engineered. I could go into that more detail about how they treated the engine blocks and so on, and ran the engine for a long time, took it apart, examined for any wear, and then after that refitted it before it went into use. Every engine was taken like that. Every engine was put out in the paddock for the engine block to season for 2 years before it was machined, so it would stabilise the metals. But going back to America and production, then for each of the items that people use as consumables, the same approach is done until you get absolutely brilliant design by the top designers that you can get anywhere in the world. They're brought together to design these things, so they are absolutely the best, and the materials in them are the best, and they'll last for 50, 60 years. And those are the ones that are put on into production, and therefore you don't have the huge wastage of the poor quality things shoved onto the public, and because that's all they can afford.
And what suits best the people making them, because they want you to buy them over and over.
But the same with everything that's produced, including the solutions to housing and the solutions to food production and all of those things. If that were done, people could live with something like a third of the expenditure of energy in the form of electricity, water, gas, or any other of the power sources.
I think one thing I've noticed in relation to this is that a lot of what seems to be manufactured, or the sake of innovation, the purpose of innovation seems to be for convenience of people. So if we look at things like food, for example,
for profit,
we now have people ordering, especially from my generation, ordering food through their mobile phone, delivered straight to their door. And we can also just trace back a lot of inventions to the idea of convenience, the invention of a car or a dishwasher. So I wonder, do you think that it's by being too lazy, I guess, or having the world too easy for us? Is this, two questions, is this a product of the system we live in, and do you think it makes us unhappy?
Yes. To both questions.
Both,
Yes. Because I believe that in a way it's contributing to the subjugation of the development of the people who are the victims of that system. That is, that they can be fed all sorts of diversions, but not any information that enables them to think positively about important social issues. I think that's a negation of the rights of the individual.
So I notice you're very well educated. I know that you have read a lot and continue to read a lot in your own spare time. Is there anything you're not interested in?
I've been reading on the evolvement of the species and of the people who've contributed to understanding of that, including people like Darwin, etc.
I've just started reading.
And also on genetics and things of that type, and on philosophy of different countries. For example, a lot of people popularly say Confucius he say, and then some little bon mot which is rude. But actually, he was actually a writer of giving advice to two neighbouring states in China. The two neighbouring states were often in conflict with each other, and he would act as an advisor to each of them, jointly or in turn, ameliorating that position and leading them into a better life. It's Li Po, the Chinese poet, put forward beautiful poems which still have all the beauty now. When they were done in about the 5th, 6th century, and they still have all the beauty now that they had then. And so it was so many different things, all the writings of the philosophers, the Greek philosophers, for example. I found it necessary to read them to understand what it's all about. And same with other modern philosophers and economists. I read on those as well. So I try and keep abreast of developing and changing ideas, because they all slot into ideas that I have about ongoing nature of society.
And you've seen a lot of development in philosophy in just your lifetime.
Oh yes, yeah.
Obviously in ancient times was massive for philosophy, but the 20th century have seen Karl Popper and the Gettier cases and different forms of how do you think this development in philosophy has changed yourself and the world and your view on everything?
I think you don't have to ascribe to a particular specialist in a aspect of philosophy. You can have your own generalised accumulation of inputs from which you have arrived at a point of view yourself that you can apply to your thinking. You don't have to follow a philosopher.
Yeah.
But I think that the reading of a whole lot of different philosophers is absolutely important.
Yeah. So you think it's more important to formulate your own ideology?
Yes, absolutely.
Than subscribing to one?
Oh yeah, yes, always.
And would that tie into your perspective on religion as well? Do you associate with certain ideals of religions without being a member of it?
There's a lot of loose thinking about it. For example, no matter what we think of India, there is a caste system. If you're in the upper level of the caste system, you can be a leader in society and live in luxury most often. If you're down in the caste, which is a cleaning caste, and they can't get out of it, it's all of those different levels in between where you can't change yourself, even if you adopt philosophy or in nature and become a better person, you can't adopt. That, to my mind, is something which they have to get rid of. And I think that I made that analogy, but I'd make the same analogy with Protestant and Catholic religion, and the same with all the other religions. When I see a benign and lovely natured person usually in a costume, and he's smiling, the Dalai Lama, I see a person who as is a representative of a group of people who have latched themselves onto society and without producing themselves get from the society all they want. But I don't think they really contribute. They'll put forward philosophical bon mots, but those are usually, I think, I don't think they really have value. And I don't think there's any value in any of the religions. That's just an opinion that I've arrived at.
Do you think there ever were values at religion?
I don't think there ever were. I think there are false thinking on part of the people.
How about the idea that...
Including the religions that used to kill people because they were herbalists, calling them witches. Kill them in a brutal form, or etc., etc.
Do you think religion has contributed to allowing humans to cooperate in bigger groups because we can share the same values and morals and we fear the same fears and keeps people in check?
If you are a person who is religious, you can tell yourself that, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that's necessary. Why can't people meet without a framework of religion, which is a unjustified basis of thinking?
Do we need some sort of framework?
We only need the framework of people trying to work together and cooperate and be nice people. That doesn't have to be religious.
So how do we get that? Does that involve just a good upbringing?
Well, it involves a complete reorganisation of the society so that people can pursue cultural activities and pursue health activities and all of those things without the overload of a constricting nature of thought.
I think something that's interesting about the development of time is all these new technologies that have made tasks easier and have saved so much time. So why are we working just as much as we ever have been?
I think that the nature of the capitalist system, and I have to use that term, is that it will get out of people as much as they can so that they can profit massively, and they couldn't give a stuff about whether or not the people are contented or any other thing. I think that it's if people were able to get together to decide on the nature of production and work in a cooperative way, we could produce all the things we need on that example I gave you of America, of the highest quality, which wouldn't wear out, and we wouldn't have to be paying large amounts of money to replace things every couple of years or so. So that we could change the nature of society, and if people had more time, there could be that they could perhaps then indulge themselves in pleasures of education and cooperation and other things.
Which is the word school is what it meant leisure. That's what the ancient Greeks thought it was leisure time.
But the other thing, of course, is that where you have this is another thing I feel is not fair in terms of religion, that money from the state should go to any religious school. I think only all the money from the state and Commonwealth should go to state schools and Commonwealth schools only. And that would improve our education systems.
Do you think maybe all education should be public to stop because someone born into not much wealth?
I have no control over people who are within a religious framework deciding they want a religious school and their religious school is the only thing they'll go to. I can't stop that. Whether people would themselves evolve to the stage where they if they wanted to have some involvement in other than straight philosophically scientific belief, they could, but not be something which they're forced into by their parents. If they were led to some sort of other spiritual type belief, I can't see anything wrong with it. But as long as all of the basic needs of people are met in an equal way.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, especially in terms of education. On the topic of science and religion, do you feel science can be treated as a bit of a religion at times? Do you think dogma is prevalent? I was just watching some videos about Einstein's theory of relativity and how certain dogmas still exist. I'm not sure how aware you are of Einstein's theories.
Yes.
But about the topic of this idea of the acceleration being absolute and these sort of disagreements. But it just made me more think that these notions of science, when taught by bad scientists, are taught as fact. When it's taught by good scientists, are taught as models and theories. Do you think...
I prefer the latter. I think that this science can't establish itself as a concrete fact. Yep. It's an ongoing thing, and a person then can study the science, and together people will come to conclusions which will be changed as new conclusions come up by the new mode of thought or some other contributing factor, or change of time, or change of physical environment of the fact that the science is being practiced. As in the sea, we're seeing a whole lot of examples of the way in which sea life, because of the warming, has been changing the coral reef and all of the fish that live in the coral.
Yeah. So I guess this, with the development of science over your lifetime, where do you see, as someone myself, I'm 21, when I'm at 100, what do you foresee in the future? Do you think science can plateau? With just say in physics, the ability to make new scientific discoveries now requires teams of large scientists and millions of dollars of funding. Do you think scientific progression could slow down?
In some aspects of science, that's true. I accept that completely. That but there are still some of the science relating to thinking which doesn't need that, and there are a lot of the sciences relating to thinking that is. It could be in terms of literature and the pleasure and appreciation of literature and the gaining of meaning from it. For example, Guy de Maupassant I would put forward as being perhaps one of the best short story writers there ever was. I know I've read a lot of others who are good, but in the sense that he could put forward in a short story a lot of factors relating to the human behaviour and differences in human behaviour and the interaction of those two things, as for example in the story Boule de Suif, which is a story about a very wealthy group who are travelling in the countryside and come to a hotel, etc., where there is a girl who's a very good-natured peasant girl who's exploited. And they will they will pursue their things, the girl will pursue hers, and others who are in the same environment, who are neither one nor the other, will then be modified in their thinking by what goes on. But it's a beautiful story, a very complex story, and the same with even things like A Piece of String or other stories, the short story you wrote. I've read all of Aesop's fables and all of Grimm's fairy tales and a lot of other things like that. I just read the lot. I've read and most of Shakespeare. I won't say all, but I've read probably 90% of Shakespeare.
There's a lot of Shakespeare already.
And he was an important person in my understanding of the arts in that field. So that I still remember statements of Richard III early in the piece: "I that am rudely stamped and want love's majesty to struck before wanting him, cast before my time, scarce half made up," etc. You know, I remember bits from Shakespeare all over that were significant bits to me at the time.
Yeah.
And Richard III did carry on as a arch bastard, you know.
Yeah.
But the same with all of the other Shakespearean plays, a huge variety of different scenarios and different types of actors who play out roles relative to the environment they've been put in, and he's a brilliant writer. So any brilliant writer like that, I've read all of Oscar Wilde and all of a lot of the major writers, including all of the works of Once Upon a Midnight Dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "Who is this?" I softly muttered, etc. It's The Raven, and by Edgar Allan Poe. The bits like that stick in your mind because they're a lead into a concept and then a development of it, which I find is brilliant literature. And there are so many, all of the different writers I've read have that in one quality or another.
Yeah. I'm very fascinated by your continual desire to read and learn and appreciate the arts, because I think, and I can tell you this from someone who's 21, is that there's an idea that as we age, the world becomes less colourful, and we lose the novelty of things and our inner child, and I guess we sort of just get stuck in patterns. So would you disagree with that?
No.
Have you always?
For example, you get stuck in a $40,000 debt for education, when education should be free, and where if the society were a just society, it would be free. You know, it's. Whitlam had the right idea in making university education free.
Yeah.
And it's something which other people haven't followed. But we can't follow it because we have, in the nature of our society, we have admired the wrong things. I was lecturing at Melbourne University when 80% of the staff were tenured lecturers. I was involved in the setting up of a completely new design education course where we spent months studying the needs of those people in the education and what we needed to tell them. And we even went through the process of designing curricula. And then we had to decide on the framework of structure in which that would be applied and taught. So we had to develop specialised learning centres For example, in design, it was necessary for students, if they're designing graphics is one thing, we need a graphic studio. Physical objects, another thing. We had to have a workshop with high precision tools and a huge variety of sophisticated tools and bending brakes and guillotines and forge facility and lathe facility, metal and wood and metal spinning facility. All of the things that are necessary to be able to make prototypes in terms of design, testing a design. We did that, and we set up the workshops, and the workshops were top quality, top level. And then we designed teaching programs which were to train people who in those days were going to become design educators. And so, because they were going to become design educators, they had to not only learn themselves for the first time how to do a lot of processes, but they had to learn how to safely teach that to their students when they're teaching design education. So I mean, it's got a lot of involvement of ifs and buts and structure and things like that. And so we were able to do that and involve ourselves in it. I made a point myself of teaching in all levels, from first year, second year, third, fourth year, and also I had postgraduate students. The postgraduate students were very interesting, of course, because they all were graduates in sometimes 2 or 3 other degrees of quality in different disciplines. But, so they were able to contribute in a way which was quite exciting to lecture to them, because they were a sort of a two-way thing. Whereas if you're lecturing to people who are novices, you're installing information. You have to try and design how to install that information, get them to experience it in a way which is meaningful to them, and they'll take it on properly and produce good results.
What do you think the key to education is? The key to education is, so I've worked at schools before, and I know people, someone who's run a school. Do you think do you think there's one way that a school can teach all students best, or is learning so individual that a schooling system will inherently be flawed?
To some extent it's individual, but only in terms of categories of ability. For example, I don't think it's good that a person who is a top quality mathematician has put into his class people who are not able to cope with basic maths. I think that he has to be able to be put into a position where he can have students who want to develop and take the best advantage of his skills, and he has to then do everything he can to engender those skills in the student. A lot of things that have happened in the public have been that with state schools, teachers have had to follow a course which includes administration and a lot of other things. They shouldn't have nothing to do with that. They should have only the job of teaching. If you want an administrator, there are plenty of administrators out in the community who can do the job perfectly. But that's not something a teacher can do while he's trying to concentrate his intention on being the best possible teacher. And similarly, the society has allowed people to come into the education system. By come in, I mean force their attention on the education system, move into the school, and even in some cases confront principals and physically injure principals because they don't like the way their child is being handled. In other words, they're putting forward their value structure forcibly on the school, whereas the school should be involved in giving good education.
Yeah. Now, something I've noticed just at the interview is that I've been a lot more restless than you have been. And you seem very just composed and solid in your position, which is a sign of, I guess, do you feel like as you've aged, do you feel more calm and content and less anxious about yourself? And
I don't feel anxious, no. But at the same time, I'm fairly confident. I was trained in a lot of different defence mechanisms. I was given full military training in unarmed combat, and I worked 2 2-hour sessions a week in judo jiu-jitsu regularly, and I worked with people who are at a black belt level, and I have been taught in army training to be able to kill a person in 1 minute without any trouble.
Right.
Well. I don't do it regularly.
Regularly?
No, I don't do it. No. But it's.
You wouldn't show it to me on camera.
But I don't feel a lack of confidence in mixing with people because I can flow. One of the main things I can cope well is I can flow in any society. I can flow with the professorial society, or in the high economics people's society, or the wealthies, or the working class, or on a farm. I've worked on farms bringing in the hay with a team of 4 Clydesdale horses and a hay wagon, and driven a Clydesdale with a single flow from a plough, ploughing up a small area of a field for gardens, etc. So on. And I've cleaned out sheep dip in between seasons of sheep dipping and otherwise, pulling out the dead carcass and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I've had a wide variety of experiences, and I don't single out any of them. They all for some reason. They were to earn some pocket money, to do other things. But always, ever since I was a child, my father has taught my brother and I to do things. By the time I was 10, we used to have to re-sole and heel our boots. We used hobnails. We used to, every child used to wear boots in those days in the country. But I was also had learnt to make an elaborate crystal set. Set up a 100-foot aerial up with insulators, and use the crystal set to select out of the air those radio waves which are there now. There's radio waves, they're passing through you, and they're over here now, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Those radio waves are there with a crystal set where you have a little coil up against a crystal, and then from one end of that you go to a variable resistor. A variable resistor is where you have those two plates like that come in, and that's a tuner. So by varying the resistance you can tune into a particular station, and then you have going off to the aerial and to lightning arrestor and all the rest of it. But there's no power. There's no battery, no electricity, just a crystal and a cat's whisker. A cat's whisker is a wire that goes off to another. So that with that you can extract from the air these mysterious radio waves which are all around you. Don't worry about them, think about the cosmic rays.
Yeah.
Because the cosmic rays are coming down and they're going right through you and into the ground all the time, but you can stop it.
Yeah.
All you need is a lead block this thick, and you carry it over your head, big block.
Yeah.
You carry it around over your head all the time, and you can stop them from coming.
Is that how you got to 100 years old?
You can stop them. No, I don't do it. I've learned to adapt to them coming through me.
Oh, okay, well that's
But
good.
for you, if you feel worried about it.
Yeah, well, I guess I hope the Earth's magnetic field's doing most of that for me. But yeah, I guess that, so like on the tail end of this interview, I want to ask, because you have so much vitality, and just to be 100 years old is actually quite incomprehensible for most people, just by the sheer idea that 50 years ago you were 50. And for some people, 50 is old. I've seen some 50-year-olds who don't look like they have anything more to give, especially 60. And I look at you, 100, and I see that you just come from an economics class, and you are making jewelry, and writing an autobiography, and you go to the gym multiple times a week. Do you think there is a secret to preserving youth, and do you think you employed it?
No.
No secret.
No, I have no miraculous cures, and I can't pronounce on you, you will do this or that. You have to do for yourself the things that are necessary to keep yourself fit, to eat proper food, develop your mind. No one else is going to do it for you if you don't want it to happen.
Yeah. Do you think there's any existence of fate?
I don't believe in any religion. I don't believe in fate. No, fate is just introducing another religious concept.
Yeah.
Why should I do it when I've got rid of the others? Why should I introduce that one? You feel you on the other hand always come back to the idea of almost that you're holding on to a religious belief as if it's important to you, and you're reluctant to let any of it go.
Me specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not religious,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to see. There's degrees of atheism, I guess, and some people can be spiritual without being religious. Not that I am.
Well, no. What do you mean by spiritual?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, well, I guess that's another question in itself. Is, do you believe in the soul, or are humans and animals completely mechanical objects, or is there does a life force exist?
I don't believe there's a life force as such, which is a remote thing. I don't believe in any of those propositions. All I believe is the people are advanced animals.
I saw the front cover of a book, and I was reading just the back of it, and it was suggesting that a lot of the problems, psychological problems humans face, are that we reject the fact that we're animals.
Yeah.
And do you think that if we embrace our animal behaviours, we can...
I wouldn't go so far as to be yowling at the moon.
Well, but I mean human-animal behaviours.
I think that it is important for people to accept the reality of the fact that we are living creatures of an advanced nature within all the creatures that are on Earth, and that within our development we've gone out of the stage of primitive communication by grunts and moans and whistles or whatever, to speech and thought and philosophical relationships, and that we are no more than that. We are people. And as soon as you start trying to load your mind up with all sorts of mumbo-jumbo to explain it, rather than a philosophical or rational or scientific approach, you get yourself into difficulties which can lead you to psychological problems.
How would you give comfort? Because a lot of people hold on to religion and their beliefs for comfort, for existential comfort.
Yeah.
So how do you find existential comfort?
I see nothing wrong. I'm not going to try and change them. They can do that. That's their right. I don't want to interfere with other people's right to believe in those things if they want it. I'm just putting forward to you what I believe, and I don't believe any of those things.
Yeah. No, well, it's amazing. I feel like you go against what most people of your time, would you say, believe in?
My mother had two sisters, two brothers and a sister, and an adopted sister. My grandmother was very, 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 very devout Catholic, and so was my mother's sister. My mother was given the option. She went off to study and away from the home in Denali, and she studied music and got qualifications as I mentioned before, as a pianist. But she was given the option of deciding when she wanted to, at 21, whether she wanted to become religious or not. She just let it go.
Yeah.
And I remember that where we lived at Maryborough, the local priest we walked down the street past our house, and he'd often talk to my mother, and I think he was trying to get her back. But she had nothing to do with it.
Wow. Yeah. That's fascinating. Well, I've learned a lot from your wisdoms, and there's countless hours more I could learn from you. Yeah. But I guess I'll have to read it through your
me too.
autobiography. Well, yeah, exactly. But I just want to thank you a lot
for
this, because not every day do you meet a 100-year-old, get to know one, or get the opportunity to talk with them and learn their insight. And I think you're particularly amazing because you have had so much experience in your life, and you know a lot, you've read a lot, and I think in your beliefs you're very open-minded, which goes against, I guess, as the brain ages, they say it becomes less neuroplastic, stiffer, but I take it you're quite an open-minded person, open to new ideas and perspectives.
I go on living.
Yeah, I think you're redefining what it means to be a human and what it means to be 100. So Hal Peck, thank you very much. It is much appreciated.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And also, would I be able to have a game of pool?
I'm not
Are
frightened.
you up for it?
I'm not frightened.
Shall we?
Oh, yeah. I'll get my kid.